Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Republican Representative David Steffen of Howard is seeking re-election in the 4th Assembly District. David, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
Thank you. Good morning.
I was struck by the press conference that I was at involving prison options. The Green Bay prison, built in the 18th century.
Yeah.
Howard would like it, a new prison located somewhere in northeast Wisconsin, and Howard would like to develop that because Howard is out of developable space, excuse me. So where do we go on the prison issue, since
Sure.
You're on the forefront of that debate?
Absolutely. So the village of Alloway is actually where it's located.
Thank you for the correction.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, this is something that is such a win. It should be, and I think it will be, a bipartisan effort. It provides an opportunity to save the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin $150 million over the next 10 years, all while providing greater recidivism reduction programming, better mental health services for the inmates, a safer, better environment for those workers. In addition to that, it provides the village of Alloway $100 million economic development opportunity within their community. So we have an opportunity to address some of the core challenges that are facing the corrections system while also unlocking economic development in the area. There's nothing like this that exists elsewhere in state government or in the state, and I've been working on it for 2 years, and I'm hoping that we're going to have some success in this next budget.
What you'd like to do then is to fund a new prison in this area in Brown County?
Brown
Correct?
County or in an adjacent county, but it should be in the area, and that's
It
incredibly
should be in
important.
northeast Wisconsin.
Absolutely, because I want every one of those workers, and I know Department of Corrections agrees with me, we need every single one of those workers who are currently there to be able to comfortably get to this new location. It is incredibly difficult to recruit and retain workers at a maximum security facility. And so having it within 15-minute drive of the existing facility so that those workers can easily transition to a new facility is important. And that's why my proposal was specific in terms of the geography. Brown County or an adjacent county only for the new facility.
That's now officially being studied, correct?
It is, yeah. The state has allocated $600,000 to evaluate that proposal and other options. We're expecting a preliminary findings report within the next 30, 60 days that relate to this. And I am very, very confident that Governor Walker, if reelected, will incorporate this into his budget. It just makes sense financially, service related. There is no other solution that I've been able to find in government that reduces the tax burden to this great of an extent and provides a better service. This is really one of those great opportunities for the state.
What have you heard, though, is the construction cost of a new prison? 300 million, 400? What's the
300
best?
is on the top end,
Okay.
as low as 150. It all depends on how secure, how many bells, how many whistles. And what I'd like to do is for us to make this really something that puts a high emphasis, obviously, not only on security, but safety for the workers, but some of that recidivism reduction programming space that is currently not available in, as you mentioned, a 120-year-old crumbling facility in Alloway. And so it might be a little more expensive than the average one, but at the end of the day, we'll still end up saving the taxpayers a boatload of money.
How do you react when some Democratic candidates for governor say that we should look at cutting the prison population in half over 2, 3, 4, 5 years?
I just don't know how you do that without letting violent offenders out. I'm concerned about that element of it. Now, if there is some opportunity to work on reducing the population for nonviolent offenders, and primarily through recidivism reduction, as well as some treatment and diversion for those who have nonviolent drug-related offenses, I'm open to those sort of things. But people need to serve their terms. And but if it needs to be in some sort of alternate platform, but most importantly, let's really try to work to make sure those people don't get back into our system. Let's have them be productive in the system once they're out of it. And so that's where the solution is long-term for corrections.
Okay, new subjects.
Yeah.
The impasse in the Capitol among leaders of your party over how we pay for highways. How do you want that resolved?
Well, that is, I'll tell you what, transportation was my biggest disappointment this last session.
Okay.
The fact that we weren't able to get the funding that I believe is necessary to make some of this happen. And so we need to continue to be creative, constructive, collaborative, and finding ways to make that work. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. The governor, if reelected, has made some comments as to how he would be open to funding it, not open to funding it. And so we got to work within those parameters if he's reelected. But I think everyone, including the governor, has indicated, transportation is going to be a priority this next budget, this next 4 years of his term. And so I'm sure we're going to find a way through that problem.
If a package included a gas tax increase, could you vote for it?
Yes.
You could.
Absolutely.
How many pennies?
That's to be determined, but I'll tell you what, we have a system in place, and a gas tax is a user pays arrangement, and it's supported by industry, it's supported by the transport. I have Schneider National in my district, one of the largest truckload carriers in the entire world, and they support it, and they're big consumers of that gasoline and diesel. So I'll tell you what, it is the way to handle it. Some of the other options that are floated are a little more clunky, they're also inefficient. We have it in place, and I think it's a way that we should be handling these problems.
Not a fan of tolling, are you?
I'm not. It's not a very efficient mechanism. It sounds great. Hey, let's have Illinois people as they're coming up to Door County pay for it. It just doesn't work that well. It's incredibly inefficient administratively. You still got to have people man it. You still got to expand the highways to have those off lanes for it. It sounds great, but the proof I've seen the research, and it just doesn't turn out as nice and clean as a lot of people may think.
Local governments have lived with levy limits for about 14 years.
Yes.
You've heard the concerns of some local leaders. Do we keep levy limits in place to control property taxes, loosen them, or get rid of them?
Well, I was a local elected official in the village of Howard for 8 years before becoming a state representative, and I have so much respect for their authority, their role, and so giving them more authority, I think, is appropriate in this regard. One of the things that I think we should be opening up is giving them more control over their own pocketbook. Now, with that comes more responsibility. If they're going to have more control over their ability to generate revenue, well, you know what that means? That's less having your hand out to the state for things as well, and having less expectations on the state. I don't know why we thought it was the right answer to say we're going to take care of all 600 plus villages and cities in Wisconsin in terms of all of their challenges, as well as the 1,000 townships we have. These people are well run. They're all equally democratically elected as I am. Allow them to do what they are there for, just as I am, just smaller districts, and provide them the authority because they are responsive to the constituency as much as I am.
The current state budget, as you know, included a pretty significant increase in K-12 state aid.
Yes.
When local school administrators say they need another similar big increase in the next budget, what's your feeling?
Well, when we say a big increase, let's be clear, it's historic. It's $630 million of increase. In addition to that, I fought for an additional $12 million for my district specifically. They are what are called low revenue districts, and I worked to get them an additional kind of boost on top of that. So the amount of money is historic. And I certainly believe that there's opportunities for additional revenue. What I would like to see is that we tie it to some metrics and results, based evidence on what is working to increase scores, increase graduation rates, elevate ACT scores that we are seeing not only within the state of Wisconsin, but also nationally. So if money was the only thing that we needed to solve every problem in education, we may have solved it a long time ago. And so I'd like to make sure that we are tying the input, that being more money, with the output, which is results. And I think that's a reasonable expectation. I would love to be innovative. Let's try some things. I'm very fortunate to have the Administrator of the Year within my district, 422 school districts. Number one in there is Howard Swamico Administrator from my area. And boy, I tell you what, some innovative things are happening. So let's find ways to support our schools, our school districts, getting money in the classrooms. But let's try to find some innovative things, some pilot programs that we can invest in to see if they work and actually move the meter on the metrics that matter at the end of the education process.
Should the voucher and the choice program continue to expand?
Absolutely. It's been incredibly successful. We are finding ways to benefit families and children that has never happened before. And I think it's a core issue of what are we trying to do here? It's all about trying to benefit the child, assist the family, and not all systems work the same. And remember, the charter and voucher program, those are essentially a version of the open enrollment program that everyone supports right now. And that the open enrollment meaning they can go from school district to school district openly. And so this, the charter and the voucher program are an extension of that. So not every child is created the same, and therefore their education program and facility may not need to be the same. So we need to continue to support education in every form it comes.
You voted for the Foxconn and Kimberly-Clark tax
Yes.
breaks, tax benefits. Are you afraid every other Wisconsin company is going to come in and ask for the same benefits?
Well, I would expect them to line up for it. It's not unreasonable to expect that. However, that doesn't mean that they should receive it. We have a couple very, very unique situations with Foxconn. Let's talk specifically about that. That is the largest investment in the United States in the U.S. history. And it's a complete game changer in terms of a new ecosystem of investment and technology, maybe in the nation. And so, this is the difference between one looking at life in the world and the economy as half empty versus half full. And then secondarily, just having some business experience where you see that these types of things can be transformative. And that's why I think that these are ultimately going to be great for the state of Wisconsin. And I love having a light shining on Wisconsin saying, whether you're from another community, another state, another country, we are open for business and we want you to come in and invest here in Wisconsin.
Let's go to healthcare. How do we preserve and maybe expand healthcare in rural areas of Wisconsin?
Yeah, the rural area is certainly one of the toughest areas in terms of the delivery of healthcare. And as it relates to healthcare, one of the things that we certainly have done is make some affordability efforts addressed. I was very happy to work with the governor of my party to have this reinsurance program initiated, which is going to reduce the cost of health insurance just in my district alone for the first time in the history of the ACA, Obamacare program. Mm-hmm. As it relates to some of the rural areas, we have to continue to find ways to incent doctors and healthcare professionals to be in those underserved areas. And I've been a big proponent of some sort of northern exposure, if you remember that TV show from the 80s, northern exposure type of initiative where we are supporting innovative ways relating to loans, school loans, medical school loans, incentives to ensure that we have the healthcare needs that are necessary in those underserved rural areas.
So state government has a role in recruiting and retaining physicians, nurses, and other medical professionals?
It has, and it should, and it has. So we have put a tremendous amount of effort even to date. We worked with the Medical College of Wisconsin to establish 2 outstate campuses that have a primary focus on those underserved areas. So there is now a Medical College of Wisconsin here in Green Bay, and there is one in Wausau. And part of the directive, the goal is that those can provide some opportunities for the physicians that come out of those operations, out of those schools, that they will stay in Wisconsin, and not just Wisconsin, but the northern portion of Wisconsin.
The pilot programs between state government and Delta Dental that offers dental service at clinics for the low income. Should that remain a priority in the next MA budget?
We need to continue to be innovative as it relates to dental care too. As it relates to dental, it is probably the lowest reimbursement rate for medical assistance and the Medicaid population, somewhere around 38-40% of actual cost. That's not really sustainable, is it? And there are many doctors who just say, you know what, instead of dealing with all the paperwork of all this, we're just going to give it for free versus even going through the program. We got to find a better way to handle that. Our dentists are part of the healthcare profession, and we need to make sure that they are properly handled during this situation. So we need to work on that some more. And so innovation of any kind that relates to that will be supported by me.
UW system budget, continue the freeze on resident undergrad tuition for a 7th and 8th year?
I'd support that, because I think we're starting to right-size that a bit. If you look at what the trend was since the 70s, 8 to 9% since the 70s increases, a little bit of a challenge. What we need to be careful of, and I'm hopeful that we do this before we fully commit to that sort of thing, is understanding how that impacts acceptance. What I don't want to have happen is that we commit to that type of program, and then the emphasis on the schools and the UW system is to then accept a far higher percent of out-of-state individuals, students, versus our own. Mm-hmm. And so I have some concerns about that. And so I'm open to the tuition freeze, and I think there's a lot of merits to it. But we've got to make sure we are aware of the potential downside and find some ways to shore that up so that our students here in the 4th Assembly District and elsewhere still have the same opportunity to access our higher education system. The
bills in the Capitol that would legalize both recreational and medical marijuana, your positions?
Well, I'm really deferring to the law enforcement community and the healthcare community that really haven't been interested in that, and I think there's a lot of problems with that. And so, I think it's something that we can continue to explore, but I tell you what, when the doctors and nurses and hospitals and police officers and sheriffs are saying this is not a good idea, do not go down this road, they're the ones who are on the front line of this much more than I am. And so I think it's important that regardless of your position, that you defer to the experts, the ones who are on the front line sometimes. And so I'm not in a position to support that. I think there's some great experiments that are occurring in California and Washington and Colorado, and maybe we should just watch those a while and continue to see how that develops before we jump into the deep end of that pool.
Finally, last question, difference between you and your opponent on November 6th?
Well, first of all, I'm thankful that both of us during this process, and these campaigns can sometimes get very difficult and dirty, that both of us have been focusing on the issues. And so that's a positive thing that I think that we've both dedicated ourselves to do. In terms of differences, I think it's where you find solutions. Most of the things that he's focused on are that the government is the source of the solutions to your problems in life. Whether he believes in a single payer system, and that's a $32 trillion liability, $100,000 per person throughout the state of Wisconsin and nationally to implement that sort of thing. Kind of a lot of expensive, plus government-sponsored daycare services and government-imposed controls on wages. And so, boy, I tell you what, I just don't think the government control model has worked well throughout the world. As a chair of International Affairs Committee, I've had the opportunity to work with other countries and talk to them about what works and what doesn't. And I've also spent time abroad, and I tell you what we got here works pretty well. Not great, but it works well. And those that have adopted and gone into the single payer system have found that the expense and efficiency isn't worth it. So if people think that their service isn't good, or wait until it's free. Wait until it's free, and then you're going to see how expensive it really is and how inefficient it is. So we got to continue to work within the system, and I respect my opponent and what he's and what he's trying to do there. But my goodness, I think government control of our life is not what should be aspirational. We should be working in many ways to control that.
Republican Representative David Steffen of Howard is seeking re-election in the 4th Assembly District. Representative, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.